Okay, I got thrown in the deep end on this. Kenneth, our rigger, was supposed to be here, our rigging manager. Unfortunately, he's not. So I just put something quickly together. So I wanted, the previous talker, where he was talking about 92% of malfunctions are packing errors. I respectfully want to disagree. I think a lot of those malfunctions can be avoided in the equipment maintenance. So I've been a tandem instructor since 91, been a tandem examiner since 95. I ran the tandem program for UPT for a number of years till we hired Tom. I was involved in the design of the Sigma. I've seen the evolution to the Sigma. I've seen in 2000 when we designed this new passenger harness, and I was involved in it. My biggest involvement was the golf balls. That was my invention. I didn't invent golf balls, but I did adapt them for the Sigma. Through the years, we've seen a lot of equipment. If I knew I was doing this talk, I have piles and piles of damaged equipment in my office. I pass along a lot of that on to Tom. So. How many here pack their own equipment? So quite a few of you. How many are in charge of equipment at your drop zone? Nobody. 1, 2, 3. So there's quite a few that pack, and something that we implemented, we've looked at various drop zones. So we looked at the drop zones that have low malfunction rates. And the best one so far is in Delaware. These guys have not had to date, in close to 17,000 tandem jumps, they have not had a malfunction. They have not had a cutaway. They might have had an incident that they had to deal with, but they have not had a cutaway for close to 17,000 jumps, and they still can't. So we'll see how this season goes. We're hoping they're going to have another season without it. We have many drop zones that have an average rate of 1 in 5,000. Guys down in New Zealand, 1 in 4,000. Some Australian operations. But so these are numbers. So we looked at these guys. Why do they have this low incident rate? And mostly consistency, doing the same thing every time for their packers, well-trained packers, observed packers. There's one drop zone in Nevada that was to the extreme, where they film the packers and they have a drop zone mandated pack job. If they step outside of that mandated pack job, the packers are professional packers. If there's an incident, the first thing they do is they pull up the packing video. They have videos. They video their tandem instructor. They did the right thing. No harm, no foul. These guys are on a salary. If the packer deviated from the drop zone mandated pack job, he's responsible for the loss of income for that rig, as well as paying for the reserve pack job. So these guys do the right thing, and they have an incident rate of 1 in 4,000. We spoke to the DGO from Delaware. They don't go to that extreme, but all their packers are trained, and they have weekly briefings on the pack jobs, things that go wrong. The equipment maintenance for them is one of the big things. So I'm going to describe. A lot of them have something similar to this in place. They do a 25 jump inspection, and it's something that we put out a few years ago. How many years ago now?
5.
5 years ago. That every 25 jumps, instead of doing your 10-minute pack job, do a 15-minute pack job where you actually look at what, you take a closer look at the equipment. And it can be done. And if you find something wrong, put that rig aside. A down rig for a drop zone owner, for a tandem instructor, if it's your own equipment, can cost you a lot of money if you have a malfunction. So I'm going to go quickly through this 25 jump inspection, what things to look for. I don't know how relevant it is for you guys, but this is what I could put together in the short time. So I'm going to unpack this, unfortunately. Okay, and start with the Drogue. Okay, so this Drogue takes the most abuse on this equipment. We know from load cell tests, this Drogue oscillates at about 60 times a second, vibrates, and we can see this on a load cell. And on an average jump, that's 3,600 times that this Drogue shakes around. So starting at the top, this thing must probably take the most abuse. It's a piece of plastic. It's a practice golf ball that we found on the market, and we had them manufactured. We have 25,000 of them, so we're not going to run out. But if this thing gets a bit loose, what we have found is that if it gets a bit loose, the screw that holds this in place starts wearing on the grommet. So the next thing that fails is a grommet. So always check to see, is my wiffle ball, I think that's a real term for them, is it cracked, broken, anything, is it tight on the Drogue? Because if it is loose, it's going to start wearing through that grommet. Next thing is look at the canopy. No significant holes. And again, when we manufacture this Drogue and we calibrate the Drogue, it's designed to do its job at sea level as a brand new Drogue. When F111 is produced, it has 0 to 3 CFM. Over time, this gets worse. So as the Drogue wears, it's going to behave differently. So calibrating the Drogue is a very important time. How long should your trapdoor effect be? Does anybody know that question? Okay, yeah, 7/10 of a second is what we design. No, it's right there. 7/10 of a second is ideal. Up to a second is acceptable, but as soon as you go beyond that, what we found is the malfunction rate increases, specifically with tension knots. So if you look at a video of a tandem jump and you see a ideally calibrated Drogue, you'll see that the bag lifts off square. As the Drogue wears and that trapdoor effect starts going over a second, we start seeing the bag doing this as it leaves, because it's going slower. As those line groups come out now, they don't come off nice and clean. They don't zigzag off like that. They come out in clumps. And that's when we see a higher incident of tension knots. So it's really important to calibrate the Drogue. How do you calibrate the Drogue? It's on our website. I'm not going to go into actually the rigging part of it. So we look at this. No significant holes, nothing bigger than a quarter. I mean, a little hole in the Drogue doesn't matter. We're still going to create the same amount of pull once it's collapsed. Mesh is in order, because once you start tearing the mesh on the equator, the Drogue starts spinning, it's not going to collapse properly. So if the thing is faster than 7/10 of a second, what happens then? Now we go from lines coming off in clumps to the whole line set dropping off at one time. We have what we call line dump or bag strip. Worst thing, bag strip. I don't know if any of you guys have had it. It hurts like hell. But also line dump. Now the lines aren't even, you get, again, high incident of tension knot. I've seen from bag strip, when the bag actually comes off the canopy before the canopy gets to line stage, it's a big cause of line overs. So even though line overs are caused by packing most of the time, they can be caused by bag strip as well, and then hard openings. So not much else in there. So checking the calibration of the Drogue. When the Drogue is new, how does that happen? Okay. When a Drogue is new, we want to see about an inch right there. As the Drogue gets older, we want to start extending this. So if you see, we have one drop zone in Canada that extended up to 5 inches, and that's okay. So when the Drogue gets old, they can stretch their Drogues up to 1,000 jumps plus by calibrating it correctly, and also making sure there's no holes. The other wear point is here, this Kevlar. Now, even though that doesn't cause any serious problems, note the Kevlar does wear where this confluence wrap is. You want to check that. But one thing you do want to check at this point is how the wear is here. So this going through that grommet wears significantly. Once you get the fluff starting to form over here, it starts slowing down the collapse again. So then the Drogue bridle, no holes, no significant holes, and I'll come down to this section here, which is a good point to check it. At this section, you can always pull the kill line out, and that's where kill lines fail, right where they go through the chimney. So if we can get it all the way down there, we can start looking for wear now. Broken kill line, hard openings, line dump, and bags. Now this is quite a new one, so it has no fluff, but you should be looking. Where's my glasses? This one, even though this is a new thing, we already see fluff starting to form on the line. So this is where kill lines wear the most. When you start seeing a lot of wear, a lot of wear and tear here. It does two things. The kill line can fail. It will also start tearing up the drogue where it goes through the chimney. And the other thing it does is it slows down the collapse again. So now you're getting the your trapdoor effect lasting longer. The cover. Two things this cover does. One, it stops canopy damage from it rolling around on the top of the canopy. The other thing is when you start getting holes in the Drogue disc cover, it starts damaging the inside of the container. That's why when we first designed the Sigma, we did not have a cover, and we saw the damage. The damage starting to. I don't know what's happening with this thing. Okay, so we started seeing damage on the inside. You guys can see this, where the D-rings go through the Type 4 that holds the D-rings in place. So that's another point. So this is going to be difficult here. So the next thing is down to the main container. Okay, another wear point that we see a lot of is. Oh, you can't hear me anymore? This thing die?
Yeah, probably switch that one off or not. Can we switch that one off?
Yeah, put yours on mute.
Okay, that's better. So here we've changed the design here. The way we sew this loop. This loop's a continuous loop, so if these stitching fails, the system's still going to work as is. But if you start seeing damage along this stitch line here, it's a zigzag. If you leave it alone, it's eventually going to pull out. One thing, most of the damage caused here is when people don't rotate the bag. If you put the bag in like this pulls against the stitch line. We now have a modification to try to stop that happening. We have this piece of Type 4 on here, so it doesn't matter which direction it pulls, but rotating the bag is important. How many people jump Sigma canopies here? So, a fair amount, okay. Okay. Next wear point here. This has to be on the ring. I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, where the tubular nylon has done something like this. Where it's not around the ring, it's actually around the PCA. When that happens, on repeated jumps, eventually that's going to wear through the PCA and you're going to lose your drogue. Which is, we like that because these things are expensive. It helps pay for my kids' college, but otherwise, for you as an operator, it's not so great. Next point is the PCA attachment point. This PCA is designed to fail if there's too much drag on this. So we'd rather the PCA fail than the canopy fail. These bar tacks do wear over time, so it's a good thing to check. I'm not going to get too much into the canopy stuff, but wear points that we see a lot of that is on the stabilizers. Yes, I better get to that point. Okay. We see a lot of wear over here that eventually, and I have a picture of some badly worn ones here. Let me see. Okay, that. So when you start seeing that kind of damage, the next thing that's going to happen is this is going to fail. You're going to lose your slider stop. And we've seen a few canopies out there that did not have the slider stop. It had already fallen out. People were still jumping it. And that will pull through a grommet and cause a malfunction. Okay. Whose canopies has Vectran line? Who of the still has Sigma with Dacron lines? No, nobody. Okay, so we changed to Vectran, I don't know, about 5-6 years ago, because we saw that the Dacron, even though great, good for openings, over time, Dacron gets really fluffy and causes a lot of tension knots. When we changed to Vectran, we saw a significant decrease in malfunction caused by tension knots. But Vectran has one thing that's not so great. It's very abrasive. It's like Kevlar. And if you are jumping Vectran line, it's really important to check your grommets. We see, especially if you're in a dusty area, we see that grommet can wear through in about 300-400 jumps sometimes. And once that goes through, within 20 jumps, you've destroyed the Vectran. So it's very important to check your grommets. Unfortunately, PD don't replace grommets. They replace sliders. We've asked them to, but they said if the grommets are worn, got a hole through them, they are not going to replace them. Risers are pretty much bulletproof. We don't see a lot of damage in risers. Does anybody use soft links on risers? Okay. Sorry, on Icarus. I say Icarus work differently. We don't recommend soft links on our risers. Reason being is that with soft links, the slider can come over the soft links and down to the risers. And we've seen that with the heat they generate, that they'll burn the risers. So we stop them. Okay, down to the 3-ring. I've got a picture here. Okay, so this happened in a country where a 3-ring was routed like this and was jumped at that specific drop zone from the pack job. So the rigger actually connected it up like this. How many months was it?
90 days plus.
Yeah, so 3 months. 3 months they continued through various instructors, various gear inspections, till it caused a fatality. The guy had a line twist, spinning malfunction on a canopy, couldn't cut away. They landed. The first thing the safety officer at this specific drop zone did, said, couldn't cut away. He pulled the cutaway handle without inspecting the equipment. So then they said to us, we have no idea. Your equipment failed. This guy was not able to cut away. It was on video. He couldn't cut away. So I said, this is not right. So we went to the guy's to instructors' Facebook pages from that drop zone, and we started looking, and we found that they did handy cam there. We found various videos of 3 or 4 different instructors jumping the equipment like that, and not one of them caught it. It's incredible that people will look at this stuff and not see it. That green light thing, somebody mentioned something about looking at stuff and expecting to see something and moving on, even if it's not right. You said that, right? Somebody behind there. And this is a common thing. I've been to drop zones and I watch people walk out to the plane and I see a mistake. And I said, you looked at this, right? And I said, well, have a look at it again. What's wrong? Oh, shit, I do this every day and I just sometimes don't see it. I say, 3 rings. Yeah, they're there. There's 3 rings. Okay. One thing we do see a lot is, so these are big reserves. They take up a lot of volume, and if you pack or live in a dry climate, you guys in Spain, when these reserves are packed, they got a lot of air in them. Over time, they settle in. When that happens, we start, and you've all seen it, where you can see the rim of the pilot chutes through the reserve pack job. That creates 2 things. First of all, you're losing pin tension on your reserve. And over time, you are going to wear through that, and then you're going to have to eventually replace the reserve container on the rig, which is a very expensive repair. The closing loop. What I see a lot is over time, the packers, they twist this closing loop. This closing loop is a specific lens to make it an easy pull and for the equipment to work correctly. When you get all those twists in the closing loop, it shortens it significantly. Don't use aftermarket loops. They're designed to be a specific lens for specific material. We've seen a lot of stuff out there that is a little bit sketchy. On the main container, the real wear point is the D-rings that the loop goes through for the closing. Make sure that Type 4 that holds it in place has no holes in it, and not come loose like you found that, right? If this was at a drop zone, the people were still jumping this equipment in that configuration. Can you see what's wrong there? It's not designed to do that. All the weight of that tandem pair, well, about 50% of the suspended weight is what's on the Drogue itself. And eventually that's going to fail and create more problems. Okay, on the Drogue pouch itself, the Drogue pouch should be able to, I've been to drop zones where packers yank this up and stick the Drogue in. Eventually that's going to open the mouth out wide. So the answer to that is to put S-folds in the Drogue to keep it secure. Best thing is if you see a worn pouch, is replace it, or holes in pouches. The golf balls themselves, in hot climates, so they work well in cold climates. In hot climates, for whatever reason, the material that's inside the golf ball expands. And you'll find over time that this will start sticking onto the housing. They're a cheap replacement, get them replaced. The other thing is also in sandy climates, it will wear out eventually that this thing does not sit on the housing securely enough. So the two extremes. The harness itself, I had that picture up here. Who jumps in coastal climates? It's humid. Okay. Once you start getting rust on the hardware like that, you're gonna significantly reduce the life of that harness. Our harnesses, we say, okay, about 1,000 jumps is what they last. That's very dependent on your environment. We'll see that we have Skydive the Land will go well over 2,000 jumps on their harness, and they're still in good condition. I actually did some pull tests for Noel recently on harnesses from his drop zone, and I think he's going to be talking about that in the rigging, right? So he has more information. So a bit of wear on the harness does not matter too much. What you really want to look at is on webbing, the edges. If you see nicks and cuts on the edges of the webbing, that's time to take that harness down. How many people are riggers here? Okay, so the edge of the webbing is a quarter-inch cut on the edge of a webbing will reduce its strength by about 50%. So if you see that kind of stuff, sometimes we try our best to make sure that the hardware, when it goes out, is correct. We inspect everything 100%, but some stuff we can't see. And if you see where it goes through the harness, the fluff, the edges start getting damaged, that's also time to take that rig offline. We are switching all our harness, all our D-rings now at the bottom here to stainless steel to try help with this problem. Okay. And then the rest of the thing, leg straps, are they good? We have covers now. This one's not on properly, but we do have covers now for all our rigs, if people want them. Any questions on anything I've discussed? How am I doing on time? 5 minutes. Sorry, I had to go through it quick. Do you have any questions? Nothing? Yes.
One of the things we see is that underneath the student attachment point, underneath the actual ring itself, there seems to be a significant wear point in there that no one or hardly anyone checks. So that's got to be an area that really does need to be looked at.
Yeah, so where you put the passenger harness through and it comes in contact with the webbing underneath.
Lift up and that bar that goes underneath.
Over here.
Pull that up.
Oh, this.
Underneath there, yeah.
Oh, yes, over here.
Yeah.
Another thing, you know, a lot of, if the harness is never adjusted, that is not really a good thing. If you never adjust harnesses, rather get a harness to fit your size and keep it that way. If you have a harness that's never adjusted, the wear happens on one point, it doesn't move where it goes through the base ring. So it is a good idea to always adjust the harness to your size. It increases the longevity of the harness. I shouldn't say that because the more harnesses you buy, the better I do. Another wear point so this that goes over this ring here, this piece of webbing here, it has a buffer, sacrificial buffer to try protect it. But that is your attachment ring for your reserve risers. So when you start seeing a lot of damage here, that's your reserve riser that is being worn out. So always make sure that that's in good order. As I said, the cover is sacrificial, it's designed, but if that cover is gone, the next thing that's going to wear is a Type 7, which is, as I said, your reserve riser. Anything else? That's easy.
Anything on the student harness that you recommend?
We're gonna go to when I do the harness fitting on the student harness, I'll discuss that. Okay, thank you.